Hi, welcome to Grocery COVID Live. I'm Meg Major with Winsight Grocery Business, along with my colleagues, John Springer, our executive editor, and Jennifer Straley, our senior editor, and of course, Phil Lempert. Good morning, good afternoon, Phil and team.
Good morning.
Morning. Phil, what's on your mind today?
Well, what's on my mind today is visiting a lot of stores yesterday, in particular Walmart. Very seldomly do we give a lot of kudos to Walmart and Sam's Club, but I think that they've done an extraordinary job with taking temperature of employees. They have one of those electronic things they put on your forehead. If your temperature is 100 or above, they'll send you home with pay. They want everybody to show up. The fact that they put those sneeze guards up, the fact that you can now wear masks and gloves. One of the things that I really believe is not only is Walmart doing the right thing and leading the way for other retailers, but at the end of this, a lot of shoppers are going to really respect Walmart. Yes, it's always been Walmart for price, but now Walmart really wants to take care of their customers and take care of their employees in a very big way. So that's one of the things that I noticed. Also, just some housekeeping details. Be sure to post your comments and questions on Facebook. We had a lot last week. It was my job. I screwed up, but today I've got my iPhone here, so I won't screw up. We'll take your questions, your comments. If there's something that you want to just say it, and we'll do it. Again, we've expanded our Facebook Live COVID-19 webcast to twice a week. Look for our next episode at this same time, 12:30 Eastern Time on Tuesday. And don't worry if you miss an episode, because they're all being archived on the Winsight Grocery Business and Supermarket Guru websites and on our face pages. So Meg, back to you.
Thank you, Phil. Well, we're going to talk about a lot of interesting things today. And later in our segment, maybe we could get back into a little bit of a discussion about some store conditions and some variances, I think, that we're all detecting. But in the meantime, I think the fortune in my cookie last night really set the stage precisely for the topic that I'm going to ask John to enlighten us on. Plan for the best, prepare for the worst. And in retailers' lives, if they can do anything really well, is planning for prices and promotions. What's more important for consumers in their mind's eye when they're thinking about where they most want to shop? It's the place with the best prices. But now that the continuum has completely been broken by the panic buying and just the whole supply chain disruptions, it leads us to really talk and think hard about the demands that the supply chain has faced in these recent weeks. John, fill us in further. You wrote a great story last week, and I just think it was terrific and something that our audience would love to hear a little bit more about.
Yeah, well, thanks, Meg. Let me just start by saying, I kind of looked into this topic, price and promotions, during the pandemic, because we had seen, some of the things that the retailers were doing, cutting back on their printed circulars, for example. There were some comments from some CPG companies that said, we're not going to roll out promotions with retailers as, aggressively as we might want it to. And that kind of led to this whole exploration of how these guys are dealing with, their perceptions in the marketplace, because normally the supermarkets are going to be trying to draw you in on price, and their message has really changed. As one of my sources in the story put it, from kind of transactional to emotional. It's no longer about come on in, buy one, get one free, not only because supplies are depleted and they might be offering things that they don't have on their shelves, but it's really about, we're in this together. This is, we're your local store. We're behind you. That's a great message for those that can do it well, because they're going to need that goodwill down the road once things ease up, the restaurants and the travel restrictions ease, and the retailers are going to have to shift pretty quickly into a fight to kind of keep that share that they won during this crisis. So there's a lot going on. It gives you thoughts of, what's going on today, and then, how they're going to have to pivot for tomorrow. It's
So, John, when I read the article, which I also agree with Meg is a fabulous one, you also say keeping an eye on the effects of rising costs, the changing in consumer buying behavior, and their near and longer term perception in the marketplace. And you mentioned, that when we go back to normal, are retailers going to learn from this experience, or are they just basically going to say, hey, we learned, we've now fixed some aspects of the supply chain, but things are going to go back to normal?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're learning a lot from this, and to be fair, these guys had come into this having faced crises in the past, right? There was another great article. Unfortunately, we didn't do it, but we mentioned it on our live blog from the Texas Monthly that talked about all the preparation that HEB had done getting into this crisis. And a lot of that, they kind of sharpened their teeth dealing with hurricanes. In Houston a couple of years ago, where they've got to mobilize their supply chain, they've got to have emergency supplies, they need to have a plan for their employees, on and on down the line. And they've sort of developed this muscle that they're really using now. And I think what we're going to see is that the retailers in the stores that are doing this well for their customer are going to have advantages when it's all over. And I'm certain they're going to learn things. And that doesn't even get into all that's going to change here. The percentage of e-commerce that's going to shift from shopping at home to shopping online, everything about the operations in the stores, from the plexiglass to the social distancing. So
Cleaning,
there's a lot
cleaning more often.
Hey, John.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Phil. I was just going to ask John super quick, Phil. What advantages, John, are you referring to? If you could just be a little bit more specific for our audience.
The advantages of those that can communicate a message to their shoppers that they're there for them, and they can count on them during these tough times. That builds a real emotional bond with consumers and long-term loyalty. And again, that long-term loyalty, pricing perception also. We're very likely headed for a recession. If you look back to 2008, the last time there was big a recession in the U.S., it was those grocers that had a good perception coming into the crisis that did best. And so you have to kind of look at your skills, develop them, and then use them to face what's changing down the road.
And John, the one phrase that I took away that I would love to be able to figure out how we could get every retailer, every grocer, maybe it isn't just grocers, but every retailer to really embrace this concept that you've got as a community nourisher. That really stood out for me. I mean, yeah, we can talk about Dr. Tom with, IGA, your hometown store, but this brings that to a whole nother level. Community nourishers. If we could just get every grocery retailer to think of themselves that way, that it's not just about the food, but also, a lot of my neighbors, frankly, when they're going to the store, that's the only time, even though it's 6 foot apart, that's the only time that they're seeing neighbors as well.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the good ones are doing it. You look at the way the messages are crafted at Hannaford.com, for example, and there's a message from President Mike Vail that kind of lays out, the situation that they're in. And the good ones are doing this well. You mentioned Walmart, great advantages coming in for them. If they get the messaging right about it, they reinforce the idea that they're there for the consumers when they need them. And then maybe when they don't need them quite as much, they'll be higher up in their, consideration set.
And you're also talking a lot, and you started off, it went much deeper, talking about promotions. But, what do you think the next promotional vehicle will be? You say they will have to have some kind of form of promotional vehicle. Is that going to be on price? Is it going to be on offerings? Is it going to be on information? Is it going to be weekly? Is it, are we going to be able to move away from the idea of a circular being junk mail? I can't remember the last time that I looked at any of the circulars that I get in the mail because there's just so many, and I really don't need a Princess Di dish, no
Yeah.
matter how cheap it is. What does that next promotion vehicle really look like? Do we have any idea from any of the retailers that you're talking to?
Well, I mean, going into this crisis and absent of it, I think we'd be talking a lot about the idea of personalization versus kind of mass promotion, and that was obviously a trend that was on its way. There's differing feelings in the industry about sort of how personalized you need to be. Some would say, you know, that consumers will respond to a specific offer that goes to something that they buy normally. But there's other considerations that you need to take into account. One of which is that not every retailer has a handle on their entire consumers shopping, because people are shopping at so many different places. That's one. And others will argue that that personalization is important, but it shouldn't come at the cost of a widespread message to consumers. So some retailers are doing this idea that we will personalize a message to you, but it's from the same offer that's going to everybody.
And you also talked about a program, a campaign that I'm not familiar with at all, that's starting in Pennsylvania, hashtag More for All. What is that about, and what kind of legs do you think that has?
Yeah, that was an example of how retailers were sort of changing their messaging up to respond to the crisis. And the Giant Company CEO Nick Bertram had taken out letters to the editors in city papers like the Philadelphia Inquirer, and they're kind of tying the idea of reducing the some retailer, the Giant Company, Phil. Yeah, they're reducing the hoarding activity going on in stores by tying that message to food insecurity.
So I just want to take some of our messages. Once again, I screwed up by having my audio on my phone up, even though I thought it was off. Richard Werner says, how much risk do you see in the supply chain from guest worker visas and transportation? Will there be enough workers getting visas and willing to travel? Will there be enough truckers? There was already a shortage. Love to get all three of you to comment on that. I'll just start to tell everybody that I know from a farm labor standpoint, there is a huge problem, especially because of immigration, that a lot of the workers are frankly afraid to come here and to be quarantined for 14 days without pay. But love to hear from the three of you. What do you think about the risks?
Well, Phil, I tell you what, I think this is such a wait and see moment thinking about all the complexities that our industry has muddled through this past month. And as many have told us, and we talked yesterday, our team, many are making it up as they go. It's just because this is unlike anything. So the driver shortage has already had been in the works 20 years, actually.
Yep.
So for how this gets addressed, I wish I had the crystal ball that would tell me. I don't know.
Well, Jen has the crystal ball. Jen, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the shortage of truck drivers has been an issue, as Meg said, for a long time. And I'm wondering what's going to happen with almost every major grocery retailer is trying to hire, hundreds, if not thousands of workers for in-store too. And I'm wondering where this is all going to go in terms of, are we going to go from a mostly self-service situation in grocery to needing more people to, whether it's policing the salad bar or making sure
I think salad bars are gone.
Yeah.
I know. And that's what I was going to say. That really, I think, is an appropriate segue. And I feel sort of badly that we necessarily didn't answer that question very well, but it's certainly a provocative one. And I think that will inform our reporting, is something that we can continue to look into. In the meantime, I think Jen really hit the nail on the head when she mentioned about the self-service. For an industry as grocery, who was built itself has built itself around self-service for about the past 50 years. I mean, the era of the modern supermarket isn't all that old when you think about it, 60, 75 years, whatever. But 50 of those years have been spent undoing all of the labor that grocers used to do, from taking the packages to the cars, to picking the orders, to home delivery. So we're seeing a little bit how much of a everything old is new again era will we enter also remains to be seen. But I think that the biggest thing on our minds right now is how much of the sticky behavior is going to linger after COVID-19 simmers down. Speaking of when John was talking about prices and promotions, I don't think there's been anything more interesting to us in the past couple of weeks than what will become of printed circulars, as you talked about earlier, Phil. But how printed circulars, Hy-Vee and a few others are disbanding printed circulars, saying that because their supply chain is out of whack, because there's lack of availability and guarantee that those products that were on promotion were going to be available, they kicked their circulars out the door. So we're wondering, is that going to remain in effect and how that will go? So John, do you have any thoughts on wanting to chime in on that topic?
Yeah, well, I talked a little bit about it earlier, but I think there's mixed feelings about how this is all going to work out. You know, there is definitely a big move toward, the retailers would like all their customers, for example, to get on their phones and direct their traffic there. They can get a much more succinct message to them. Everything else. So that is going to happen, and it probably will continue to happen. As things go forward. As far as the paper circular, I don't think it'll go away forever. I think the idea of being able to offer a broad range of stuff to a wide group of people is something that grocery will do one way or another, whether it's with paper circulars, whether it's all online, that part of the industry is going to continue. So I think, for the time being, it's about let's not promise something that we can't offer to our consumers. So why put it out, and let's save that money. Let's put it toward hiring new people. Let's put it towards, whatever else we can do.
I'd love to know from our audience who's reading paper circulars, because very few people that we know collectively do. Right. So it's just a point of curiosity.
I'd like to move back into store if I can, and just take some more comments. Kai Robertson, old friend. She's not old. I just know her a long time from World Wildlife Fund, from FMI, and so on. Asked, we're now hearing of store employees testing positive for COVID-19. Publix, Trader Joe's. What might be the implications for the industry? Will foot traffic go down? Also, since everyone really could be, a virus carrier, should all store staff and customers wear masks and bandanas to keep us from touching our faces? Meg, what do you think about that? What's the new norm?
We had a lively conversation yesterday about this at our team meeting. I'm going to turn to Jen, because Jen and I and John have all share similar opinions, but we haven't heard much from Jen. So Jen, what's your thoughts, and if you want to recap what we were talking about yesterday as it pertains to employees with COVID, go right ahead.
Sure. Well, I mean, it was just announced that, Whole Foods and Amazon is now going to be taking the temperature of every employee starting this week. Others like Walmart have been doing it. And then some retailers are taking the customers' temperatures. And I think, in terms of, and we're going to continue to see this, we're going to continue to see more and more store employees test positive for coronavirus. And so then, what are the protocols in place? Certain retailers like Trader Joe's and Giant Eagle, they shut the stores down, do a deep clean. Yep. They're closed for several days. Other grocery retailers, don't close at all and say that, that they're doing a cleaning approach, but we don't, know the details of that. It doesn't require the store to close down. So it'll be interesting to see if sort of this becomes a more official, protocol of what happens when an employee tests positive. What are next steps?
And also, let me go back to the farm. I'm going to take one more question, and then I know that, Jen, you have a lot more to say. David Stone from Forager has hosted 4 virtual roundtable calls with more than 100 small farms. Many of them are struggling, having seen their businesses dry up overnight as consumers have shifted purchasing from restaurants, farmers markets to online commerce. What really happens to these small companies? And in fact, Dave Foreman also says that a supplier, in the case of UNFI, are limiting the total number of cases per delivery to stores. Specialty items are the immediate victims here. What impact will that have long term? So I guess my question to all 3 of you is, it's a small guy had a business, whether it be a farmer or whether it be a specialty foods company, if they're limiting, the kind of distribution that they're used to having, and even with the new, package from Congress to help these small businesses, is it going to be in enough time to keep them open, or are we going to start to see a lot of small farms and companies close?
I think, Phil, we could probably get into that a little bit more robustly on Tuesday, because Jen's working on a story right now for our upcoming issue that I think she's going to have a little bit more in her back pocket to share, because she's going to be reaching out to a lot. She is reaching out to a lot of small vendors from in the specialty segment. So I think I'm going to be really curious to hear the input that Jen walks away with.
So Jen, is there anything that you can share with us right now that you've heard from any of these companies that, just tease us a little bit for the upcoming story?
Yeah, I mean, and I think, specialty and local farms, I mean, before coronavirus, that was all we talked about. That was like the lifeblood of the food supply. It's the number one trend. I don't see people letting that go. I mean, what I'm seeing, I'm based in Denver, and I know that this is happening across the country, but I'm seeing a lot of creativity in terms of, we have multiple restaurants in town who are not only selling their food to go, but they're selling groceries now. I mean, and then they're putting together creative boxes, like come buy your morning breakfast box for a set price that, cultivates all the, curates all these different products, whether it be coffee, bagels, cream cheese, milk, and you can come pick up a box of groceries or get lobster tail from Del Frisco's to prepare at home the way, the same lobsters that the chefs would get. I mean, I think that people are surprisingly resilient and getting really creative in these times. And I certainly hope that we retain our local farmers and grocers and restaurants, and that the food industry can really rally together.
So what you're describing, and John, I'm going to ask you this, also being in New York, where we've seen this for a while, is the new supermarket, this new hybrid, we've talked about grocerants forever, but a new hybrid of what Jen is describing. And again, your wonderful phrase, where what we're really seeing is these retailers getting more focused on food, less on, what's the brand that's on the shelf, but, being very inventive with these boxes. And are we going to see restaurants and supermarkets merge? I mean, if we take a look right now, Hy-Vee is the #1 franchisee for Wahlburgers burger chain. Are we going to start to see more partnerships like that?
Yes, is the answer. But I don't think that's happening right at this moment. To answer David's question from earlier, what I've heard from some suppliers and retailers is that, the and in UNFI even, the issue is that you got to get the items out to the stores, so they're going to the biggest, fastest moving, most available stuff and sending out there. And you're right, it's taking some smaller suppliers, kind of longer tail items, kind of out of the mix for the time being. But yes, I think down the road we're gonna figure out how to reconnect these different parts of the food world that people are wanted. These were trends that were, as Jen mentioned so well, that were already strongly influencing the industry, and I think it will get back to that at some point, but it's not going to happen right away. We're still at the beginnings of this crisis.
Yeah, so my last question, and I'm going to demand that all three of you answer this. And this comes from a reporter in one of our major cities to me. When we look at the strikes, I'm calling them strikes, the walkouts and whatever that we've seen, when we've looked at workers at retail demanding hazard pay, demanding, more protective gear, do these workers have, more or less bargaining power now than they did? And what's going to be the effect of that when it's all over? Do these empowered employees of retail now feel that they've got a strength that they're going to continue with, and they're going to push forward for all kinds of things and really flip it over? Who wants to be the first one to answer that question?
I can
Yeah, go ahead,
take
John.
on, well, Jen wrote a little bit about the Instacart events of this week, and the company basically said, this had very little effect. The
Do you
pay
believe that,
bonuses-
by the way, John?
Pardon me?
Do you believe that Instacart, it did have a little effect, or it was just a good press release to send out to make everybody feel good?
I'm going to take their word for it, I think, for the
Okay.
most part. I do think that Instacart for a long time has been sort of battling this, perception issues that have come from some employees that have raised some questions about the whole gig economy. And to the extent that they're very reliant on that, I think they're a little bit vulnerable to debate about the gig economy. As far as the worker pay and bonuses, they're coming in. The retailers are being careful about how long these things are going to last. And really, just this week, we kind of reached the sunset period for the first bonuses, and we're starting to see, there's a second bonus. This will go for another couple of weeks. I think they're going to string this out week by week, 2 weeks by 2 weeks, and hopefully they'll get to a point where they, the retailers don't no longer need to do that. But 10% salary increase on volume increases that are well above that, it's going to be the way they do business for a little while.
And Jen, is it power to the store employee?
Well, I think, I was thinking about if one positive thing could come out of everything that we're going through, it would be that the front lines, that the people who are showing up every day in grocery stores, and I have to say, on a personal note, my father is one of them, and I worry about him every day going into the store.
Sure.
And they are heroes, and my dad's my hero, and I hope that these pay raises stay, because even, when you consider where they started, what they're being paid now to put themselves at risk to make sure that we're all fed, it's a pretty incredible thing.
And Meg, last word on, power to the store.
Absolutely. I mean, that was something that we've been thinking about as well, is a maintenance of these boosted pay rates. I certainly think that our industry's frontline teams deserve it, as do really everybody within what they're doing right now. So anybody who is, in my view, demanding better supplies and more safe ways to do their job, as well as more equitable pay, we support that all the way.
So, Meg, give us a preview. What are we going to be talking about next Tuesday at 12:30 Eastern Time?
So next Tuesday, we ran a little short on time, so I definitely want to talk about the things that we're thinking may or may not stick or should stick, talking about maybe the fate of salad bars and operating hours and things that certain things have been already in play, but gives us a little bit of time to take a gander out there to see what we would love to see in our ideal reset grocery world, as well as also talking about the specialty manufacturers and what their fate is. And what else were we going to plan to talk about?
Well, the other thing we're going to talk about too is we're going to be monitoring all of our viewers' comments. I couldn't get to all the comments. but put your questions in there, put topics in that you want to make sure that we're covering both in Winsight Grocery Business as well as right here on the COVID-19 webcast, again, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 12:30 Eastern time. But we will be monitoring your comments. So tell us what you want to know about, and if you agree or disagree with anything that's been said. So, that's it for this week. We're out of time. Meg is giving me the high sign saying, Phil, you talk too much, as always. So thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you, Phil.